Glenn, your Chief Marketing Officer at Wine Enthusiast, just for all of our viewers here. So why don't you first start things off with telling all of us, how did 2020 go for Wine Enthusiast, and a little bit about your business?
Sure. Needless to say, quite an interesting year last year. Q1 of last year was we were flat to down, and we were nervous because we just weren't seeing sort of the sales we were projecting. And then COVID hit, and we got very nervous. I got very nervous and started thinking, what are we going to do? What does this mean for the business? And then it was right around this time last year, so April, May of last year, people were in lockdown. They got their bearings about them. They knew where they were from a job perspective, and then they started spending. And like I like to say, we are the intersection of alcohol and home decor, right? And the amount of people who were buying, wine and other spirits and booze online last year just skyrocketed. For wine retailers, it was Christmas in April, May, June, and July. And then, our audience, our customer base they weren't traveling, they weren't going to restaurants, but they're sort of well-heeled. So they were spending money on their home. And so Wine Enthusiast, which I oversee from the marketing perspective, is that home decor, is wine coolers and cabinets, glassware, accessories. And we started really taking advantage of sort of that stay-at-home mentality. As you need more glassware, you need to clean your glassware. If you're drinking more, you want to clean your glassware, and you've got all these corks hanging around. What are you doing with those corks? So we really took advantage of that. And I look year on year what our marketing was last year. We can't exactly replicate that this year as we get back to more normalcy. So, and then it just ended up being a phenomenal year, a record year for Wine Enthusiast. And so now we're trying to figure out what does it mean for this year as we get back to quote unquote normalcy, right?
Right. Yeah. No, I'm happy to hear you guys had such a great year, and that I want to find out what you do with all those corks. So maybe you'll tell me a little later. I'm sure there's a product for it. But yeah, based on you had this massive growth, so how do you plan? How are you planning for 2021 now?
We had some very honest discussions at the end of last year, beginning of this year. I was like, when trying to predict when will normalcy be? When will we get back to normal? And what does that mean? We're not going to be seeing that, triple digit growth. We just can't. And from my perspective, from a pride perspective, where I drive growth, is we needed to be honest with ourselves. But we had a much larger base, so that growth isn't 100% anymore or 60%, but 10, 20, 30% growth on a much larger base is still very healthy. So, but we needed to really see what does that mean as people, as our audience start traveling again and start going to restaurants and leave and start going to work. I just saw an article yesterday in the Wall Street Journal that says the e-commerce sales party is coming to an end, and where you're not seeing that growth. We're still seeing great sales, but we're just not seeing that percentage growth. So what does that mean, and how do we forecast for that? And that's very challenging. And we had to look in the mirror and be honest with ourselves and say this endless, it's not an endless hockey stick. So, right. And that's really how we need to forecast. And there's tremendous challenges on the horizon as well. We're as everybody's realizing I think inflation is a real issue. And we've been thinking about that for the last 2 months. And I don't even need to go into the supply chain issues that's hitting everyone. There's a lot of items are, taking forever to get in stock, and, the wait times for customers are much longer. So we just need to take that into account, and you really need to look inward and be honest. What is the second half of the year really going to look like benchmark to last year?
Right. Yeah. You hit on a lot of things here that I want to get into, including those supply chain issues. How are you guys navigating that and the inventory challenges?
We're doing our best. It starts with factories. Some of our factories are in countries that are very hard hit by COVID still, so they're not at full capacity. And then when they finally do manufacture, they can't find containers. There's so much demand for all retailers to replenish their goods, for our manufacturers to replenish their goods, that then once you have a container, you can't get on a boat. you can't get a boat. And then when you get a boat, it sits at the port for 2 weeks, just waiting to dock. And and how are we navigating? We're doing our best to be honest with our customers and letting them know that due to COVID related issues and supply chain related issues, that we give them an expected date, but that more often than not slips. And some are very, and appreciate the communication, and some just, you can't please everyone, I like to say, but we do our best. And most people are understanding and realize, because wherever you go, there's supply, everyone's having the same issues.
Right. That you're not the only one.
We're not the only one. And we do know if an item is out of stock, the conversion rate decreases, but we're trying to be honest, and we're doing our best and ordering to that forecast, and keeping items in stock, getting them, back in stock is a challenge that everyone is dealing with now.
Yeah. So besides like reforecasting what's realistic for sales growth compared to last year, can you talk a little bit about how you go about reforecasting other parts of your business, such as costs?
Yeah, we're seeing costs go up everywhere, right? And so, and how do we navigate that? Sometimes we'll take less margin. We're looking at price increases, as everyone is. Doing our best to negotiate with all of our vendors. I'm from a marketing perspective, looking at my ROAS on a daily basis. And I think it's a combination of all the above. Is sometimes it just, you have to raise prices. Other times we'll eat it, on behalf of the customer, because that's a price point that they're willing to pay. We know sort of what that elasticity is. Mm-hmm. But there are costs increasing all across the board. Just to import goods is significant. And then once again, a chip shortage. We're in the appliance business on the wine cooler side. Chip shortages are a major problem, not just for everyone. You hear about it in the auto industry, but also, for all appliances. So that's sort of our best to navigate it, and just looking at what our current inventory costs are, what's incoming, and when, and timing of price raises if need be.
Right. No, that makes sense. So how do you go about when you're thinking of your new forecast, and it might be, flat or negative just because last year was so big? How do you go about being okay with that, making sure leadership is okay with that? I think in a recent earnings report I saw, they were comparing it to 2019 quarters. Do you think that's okay to do, or kind of what's your perspective there?
We are comping to both 2020 and 2019 just to see what that growth really is. And I was the one who was trying to be very aggressive, and it was the finance department and leadership that was saying, you got to tone it back, and let's look at this at -5%, at flat, and up. And so we've had all those models to run. Thankfully, I was the one who was they were trying to tell me to be a little more conservative. That's usually not how it goes. But so, because it was working with leadership here, working with ownership and finance, and saying this party's going to end or slow down at some point. So you have to set those expectations early. And I think we did that. I did that well. And we're still seeing great growth, just not that huge, triple-digit growth that we were a year ago.
Right. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, the party's not over. It's just slowing down. Maybe.
The party's slowing down. There's nothing wrong with 30% growth as opposed to 130% growth.
Right,
so,
yeah.
but it's hard from a emotional perspective, we'll say.
True. Yeah. Well, kind of to wrap up here, maybe, do you have any advice or lessons learned as a business about forecasting and how you're applying it to 2021?
Yeah, I think it's being honest with ownership and really seeing what those potential pitfalls are. And as soon as you see something, like as soon as we saw the delays, we're in constant contact with our inventory team and telling us about cost. You need to float it up and down in the organization and let everybody know to get ideas and prep for it and prepare for it. And what does that mean for our budget? And do we need to re-budget, in the second half of the year? And we're doing that, But actually, because it still seems to be strong, we might want to budget upwards. But it's just noticing those trends, be on the lookout for a lot of trends that are coming, and trying to predict when sort of the supply chain bottleneck will end. And there doesn't seem any end in sight yet, but we're doing our best. And now thinking about what does 2022 mean, excuse me, for chip shortages, because that seems like it's going on long, and that's going to be a challenge for anyone in electronics.
Right. Yeah, it's going to a lot of change this past year, this year, and going forward. It's going to be very interesting to see.
Yeah, and just and just looking forward, what happens if the business, if you're in that business that was really struggling during COVID, you'll probably have that hockey stick coming your way, knock on wood, hopefully. And if you had that tremendous growth, how do you temper yourself and plan that it's not going to grow as much? But I think it's all positive for people who saw growth. I don't think, yeah, like you said, the party's not coming to an end. It's slowing down, but we have such a large audience that we didn't have before now that we can nurture and cultivate into, where retention has become a tremendous strategy for us this year.
Yeah, get those repeat buyers.
Exactly.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Glenn, for your time. I appreciate it. This was a great conversation.
Great. Thanks so much for having me.